Bruins Beat is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat, presented by Prize Picks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back when you play just $5. And are presented by Game Time. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off that first purchase. Terms apply. I am Evan Marinofsky, joined today, first-time guest. It's a long time coming. This should have happened a long time ago. We've tried. We have tried. But Court Lalonde. Court, what is up?
Not much. And beautiful weather out here in Canada up north. We got 15 centimeters of snow today. Had about 10 yesterday. I saw someone posted like, "Oh, it's snowing in Boston today." I was like, "Oh, cool story."
It's nothing. It's been nothing. We're recording this Thursday, and I looked out into my backyard, and there is barely any snow on the ground. Maybe
I've
other
shoveled
parts
my
of the
driveway
house, but
twice.
That's incredible. Like that, we can't talk when you're getting that much snow up there. So
So it's different. So where I live now, when I first met you, geez, it's been like what, 8 years, 9 years. It's a long time.
It's been a long time.
You were a young lad.
It was 2019. It was the Cup.
Yes.
So it wasn't 8 or 9, but it was like 6.
No, but I mean
now.
like on Twitter. Like it's
probably before.
Yeah,
that.
like 2016 is when I first started talking to you and Connor and everybody. Anyways, long time. But yes, it was 2019 when the Cup when we met at front of the bar. But I've moved, so I'm in northern Canada now. So I used to live in like the Toronto area. Now I'm in north of it, so I get snow a lot.
Yeah, I can. Even like here in Massachusetts, when I travel up north, just in the state or to New Hampshire, you're driving and it's like, oh my God, there's more snow, there's more snow, there's more snow. And I can't even imagine up there. Because down here, like at least around Boston, like it's been unless I'm forgetting a storm, it's been a few years since there's been like a considerable amount of snow that we have gotten. We didn't have any last year. I don't think the year before we had anything crazy. We'll have flurries and stuff, but nothing
You just
major.
have like, it gets dark at 5.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we're recording at 2:45. Like it'll be dark in an hour. And it's the most depressing. I hate that. I don't like that. I don't know how people do it in Alaska where it's dark for 6 months a year. Because I like light. Who doesn't love sunlight? So I'm with you on that. Like it's tough. But Bruins are rolling. Bruins are doing all right since the Jim Montgomery firing. 6-2. I see
Who would've
people
thunk it?
arguing. Yeah, I know, right? Schedule has been, easier, but I said this to Court like before we get into questions, and I know there's a couple. Well, this was supposed to be a solo episode, but then you saved the day. You saved me because solo episodes, it's a lot of talking. So I'm glad that you're here. But we'll answer a bunch of listener questions. That's the crux of the episode. But I'm curious your take. I see NHL Network tweeted on Thursday, "Oh, the Bruins are rolling," and some people are like, "No, they're not." Blah blah blah. What's sort of your take on sort of the last 8 games?
So 6 wins under Sacco, 3 in a row just recently. The way I look at things is I look at the system that they're playing now compared to what they were playing under Montgomery. With Montgomery, they were doing more isolation and they were shooting from the point, but they weren't generating shots. Now, I hate to say it, and maybe people don't realize it, Sacco's system and Cassidy's system are very similar.
Yes.
So they were able to, and that I think probably that was a lot of the reasoning with Sweeney. You're not getting the tough off the ice like you did with Butch, but because it's true, he's a tough guy. But you are getting the same sort of system, and you have enough pieces that already knew that system. So I was looking for game number 3, and what I noticed in game number 3 is I felt, and I know you watch a lot of games. I felt like I was watching the Bruins from 2019. I was like, okay, the way they were generating shots from the point, but also at the same time generating shots whenever they can. Whenever they get an open lane, they're taking a shot.
Yep.
I also noticed under this system, they're quicker on the forecheck. With under Montgomery has them hang back a little bit and almost lets other teams set up, especially even on when they come into their zone. And you have the opposite with Sacco. He's more like, it's more of, attack that neutral zone, make sure that they are not having an easy entry. And with Montgomery, they were doing a lot of you can come in. And this sounds terrible, but one of the things I always go back to is Montgomery said it himself in the first year. They set the record and he goes, well, I didn't really coach this year.
I know.
And that was the worst thing he could have ever said.
That doomed him. Like I think people, and when you really look at the last 2 years, and obviously I thought last year he did a good job. Like, I mean, that was not a roster that I think people expected to do what it did. But then you watch that first month this year, and it's like, was that first year just Bergeron kind of running the ship? And I mean, it kind of was. And I think that's sort of what we've come to realize is like that roster where the first month of this year, everybody was giving you their worst case scenarios. That 22-23 year, you were getting everybody's best. Like, I can't remember a player that year. I mean, Hampus Lindholm was third in the Norris. Coyle gave you a lot. Zacha emerged after being kind of a sort of a nobody in New Jersey. Like, everybody gave you a ton.
It was a perfect storm. Everything they needed, they got from that hockey club. Plus, you had 2 goalies that were playing Vezina caliber hockey.
Yes, that was the other part.
And then, which helps. And we'll get into the goalies, I'm sure, because guess what? The goalies right now under Sacco are playing unbelievable. One's got a 1.97 goals against average. The other one's 202. Pretty sure. And Swayman's the one with the 202. But I also look at what happened at the beginning of this season and the end of last season. I'm sure people realize, but I don't know if people realize how close Montgomery was to being fired last year. It's no coincidence that St. Louis hired their coach the day after the Bruins advanced in the first round. Montgomery loses in the first round, he's fired.
Oh,
Like,
gone the next day.
Yeah, it's over. And I think that carried over into the season. I think the players know that kind of stuff. Well, I don't think. The players know that kind of stuff. They know that their coach is almost a dead man walking and anything he does is going to get him fired. The amount of times Montgomery was juggling the lines and then would have to defend himself to the media. And I think the media in Boston did a great job of continually asking that question. And I thought it was interesting how many people jumped back at him and said, well, no, you didn't. Like, when he said this year, he's like, oh, I always jumble the lines. They're like, well, no, you didn't. Like, we've been watching you for 2 years. That's not your style. And right now you are literally like Boggle. Like, he's like 2 shifts, you're done. Okay, we're doing this. And he would change up the lines 3 times in a game. Now, Sacco for the very first time just did it. But I say the difference of what Sacco just did is Sacco did it at the very end of the first period. And they stayed together for the whole game. He didn't move them back. He moved Zacha to the second line, and now you have Brazeau with Geeky, and they got 2 goals. And then you move Pasta to, Marchand up to the first line with Pastrnak. It's almost like, they played together before. And instantly they have chemistry, and they played great. And one thing that I noticed from the game before, even though they've been playing well, 2 games ago, Pastrnak was interviewed on the bench by Emily Kaplan. Did you see that interview?
I did, against Pittsburgh, right?
He did not look like the Pastrnak. I've met him in person, but I know that you've met him in the locker room. He is a jovial person. He is one of the nicest guys I've ever met. He's always laughing. He's always smiling. He looks so uncomfortable, and it's nothing against Emily. I think she asked a very good question considering it was in the middle of a game, but he looked very uncomfortable by that question. He didn't smile. He was kind of more like didn't know what to say almost. I think he was more stunned that she asked the question that we all wanted to know the answer to.
Why aren't you shooting the puck, basically, if memory serves, right?
So,
and I give Emily a lot of credit. Emily asks phenomenal questions.
I thought it was the best question of like all the interviews that I've heard in the last little bit. Someone asked Pastrnak the question.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think like Emily gets it and knows what to ask and how to ask a question that's going to generate a newsworthy answer, not just how do you feel out there? It's like questions that people want the answers to, which is that. Now, during a game is a wild time, but I like it. That's bold. Like, that's why you're there. You're not there to just, ask anything. And it's an interesting thing because Pastrnak, there's a couple questions from listeners on Pastrnak and different things. There was one that goes back to you with the lines. Michael Sullivan asks, we've seen some chemistry lately between Marchand and Pastrnak when they're playing together. Should Sacco keep that duo together for the time being? To me, obviously Chicago, they're the worst team in the league. They're a great reason why rebuilding is a very slippery slope. But I say yes. You're having trouble 5-on-5 scoring. What is wrong with that? I remember in the Cassidy days, they had that Marchand, Bergeron, Pastrnak line, and we used to say sometimes, break it up, spread the scoring out. But there were so many games over the years of Cassidy being here that line would have like Marchand 2 goals, Pastrnak 2 goals, Bergeron 3 assists, and then win the game like 5-2.
I was again a
And
game in Toronto where Pastrnak got a hat trick, Marchand got 2 goals, Bergeron got a goal.
there you go. Like that was the way. And if that's what you need to do to jumpstart Pastrnak playing with Marchand again, if that's how you jumpstart Lindholm,
That's where
Marchand too.
I think that's where you hit the home run right there. I think with the whole Lindholm thing, everybody is dunking on him. And you know what? Fair. His offensive production, it isn't there. It isn't there to what all our expectations were. I think that's
Correct.
the worst part with him. It's all expectations. The Bruins signed him and said he's the next Bergeron. That is not fair to him. Pastrnak said it himself at training camp. Remember, he's like, "Oh, it's like playing with Bergie on the bumper again." And I'm just like, "Oh, you guys just keep setting this guy up to fail. Like,
Well,
why are
credit
you
to
doing this?"
Zadorov. When Zadorov was signed, he was like, "Please do not compare me to Zdeno Chara." Like, and whereas Lindholm, I think in his, if memory serves, in his introductory presser, I think Bergeron was mentioned a few times, or didn't really shy away from the Bergeron comparison. And so far, not quite.
Here's the hard part. Bergeron's like a 1 in a million player. He's not a generational hockey player, but he is up there with the Bob Gaineys and the Guy Carbonos of the world, where if you have them on your hockey club, you never let them go.
No,
Like
God, no.
they're leaders on and off the ice. They do something to the game that no one else can do. And as much as we always talk about Bergeron's unbelievable defensive play, and Lindholm has that. As much as the analytical people want to throw the graphs, I watching the games, Lindholm, besides 2 games ago where he had that bad coverage in front of the net, he's usually in the right place at the right time, and his forecheck under Sacco has actually been better. With Montgomery, he was hesitant to go into the zone, and
I
I
agree.
feel with Sacco, he's first in the corner, which I really like to see. I think him and Pastrnak both have a bit of the yips.
Completely.
Because,
Completely.
like, he's getting looks. Marchand is setting up Lindholm. He's getting the looks, but he's shooting wide or he's hitting the post. Like, he's hit so many posts this year. And then you've got Pastrnak, and I said it on Diehards the other day. I was like, Pastrnak passes that pass to Zacca in OT. If Zacca doesn't score, we are on Pastrnak like it's nobody's business because he had a wide open net.
Yep.
It was like both of them had a wide open net. It didn't matter who shot that puck. It was going in. But Pastrnak in his brain right now is I can't score. So he passed that puck.
Yeah, and I think there is the, maybe it could also be 1,000 IQ play where it's like, I know Husso's going to completely come across and try to, thinks I'm going to make the shot, so I'm going to pass it back, but it's risky because that was an incredibly risky play. Smart play if it works, which it did, so it's a smart play. But it's the other end of it where Zacha misses that, and you're like, holy crap, dude. And then I think it becomes a bigger story of, holy crap, he's not taking open shots in overtime. And you've seen it. I mean, even his one-on-ones off the rush, trying to dangle defensemen. There was a couple against Chicago on Wednesday that just kind of got broken up immediately. Not a lot of confidence with his toe drag, trying to put it around defenders. It is encouraging, though. There was we'll get to the question in a bit. Someone asked about this very thing with Pastrnak. It is encouraging some of the passes he had to Marchand against Chicago.
Dude, that pass on the first goal, that was disgusting.
Across the
And I
zone.
think Connor put out like the perfect tweet, like, what happened if Pastrnak gets like 100 assists? Are we going to be okay with that?
He's
I
Joe
was like,
Thornton. He's Joe
yeah,
Thornton.
yeah, yeah. I'm okay with that, right?
People
Like,
are fine with it.
I'm
Yeah.
okay with that. I think this is what I'll say about Sacco. One, openly honest about here. I've met the man. I think he's great person off the ice. I like this move because he knows these guys more than anybody. He's been with them for the last 10 years. He has been with them through everything. And the assistant coach is different in the dressing room. The assistant coach is usually the good guy.
Mhm.
The head coach gets to be the bad guy. I don't see Sacco as a player's coach, but I also don't see him as the bad guy coach. But I also see him to be tough. And I think he probably has been having conversations with the guys. And he saw something in that first period and was like, I'm going to try it. He's probably been thinking about it for a couple games now, but he's not quick to make decisions, a lot like Butch was, where Bruce would maybe make a decision, or maybe when he would break up I'm not going to call it the perfection line. When he would
Please
break
don't.
that line up, yeah, well, I guess on this show, I guess we're allowed, but But
You can say anything you want.
yeah, but it was very hard for him to make that choice. He probably should have made it in the playoffs. Who are we kidding? But especially the way the defensive coverage was going against St. Louis. But well, that's neither here nor there.
Oh my
But
God.
I think Sacco was mulling this over, and he took his chance because he saw that they could use that as an opportunity when they were playing Chicago. And I think it worked because he jump-started 2 things. Morgan Geekie scored 2 goals. Let's like, honestly, like,
I
that's
know.
amazing.
And that Brazo pass up from his own zone.
Brazo's played amazing. I'll say
Oh, he's
this
been
right
great.
now.
He has been great.
He needs to be on
Awesome.
PP1, throw him in front of the net, just let it happen. Just do it.
Great
Just keep
tips.
it there.
Yeah.
Keep him there and have Low Rye play first power play and put McAvoy to the second power play, and I'll be happy. Or once Lindholm's back, but he ain't going to be back anytime soon.
I know.
It's just, I think this was a very smart play, and they did it against a weak team, and they're still going to have another weak opponent to play where they can have another game with this line out there. And Marchand and Pastrnak have proven time and time again that they play very well together. And the smiles on Pasternak's face that whole game against Chicago, the smiles on Marchand's face tell me that line is going to stick together. I don't see how it doesn't.
Yes. And that's, to me, like, again, like, if you're struggling 5-on-5 offense wise, like, that's what you do. And I went back and looked at Elias Lindholm's game logs, because you mentioned he's also snake bitten. You know, he has 1 goal in 26 games. Like, his first 2, he has 3 goals this year. 2 of them were in the first 3 games of the year. It was games 2 and 3.
Yeah, he had like 5 points in the first 2 games or something like that.
He looked great. He looked amazing. And it was like, oh my God, like, they've, this is a home run signing. I remember sitting here, a month and a half ago saying that. And since then, like, the 1 goal was that power play goal. It was a game winner against Utah. It was a power play goal, just kind of a tap in by the net. But you're right in that he's another one that clearly needs sort of jump starting and needs the puck to go in the net, or at least to produce more. I mean, I think he's at 13 points in 28 games, which is not, again, what you'd expect out of a guy you're paying that. But again, like, I agree with you. It's fascinating because even last year, I think we saw more of Pastrnak being the playmaker. He was the heartbeat of that offense. I think he led that offense by like 43 points. Next up was Marchand with, I think, 67.
Because they used to have this guy, he wore 37. They would do that.
Isn't that crazy? Or 40 or 46.
Yeah,
remember that guy?
He had 2 guys. One guy would slow down the play. Another guy would like be able to, like, Bergeron had eyes in the back of his head, but
Yeah.
David Krejci was so good at bringing everybody to his speed. Everybody was like, oh, he didn't have the speed. He's like, but he's the smartest guy on the ice every single time.
I think it's fascinating when, it's funny. Everybody says hockey, and especially today's game, is all about speed. And I agree. Speed is definitely a factor. But I'm so impressed by players who are able to slow the game down and bring it to them. And Krejci did that. Like, Krejci was so good at entering the offensive zone and slowing the play down. And so few guys are good at that. Like, even your most elite players are not always that good at that. And it's funny because, like, Jay Fresh on Twitter put out a thing recently of some of, like, the technically slowest players in the NHL. And a lot of them are not bad guys. I mean, Pat Maroon and stuff are at some of the top, but I think Ovechkin was in there a little bit. Jason Robertson from Dallas was another. And it's like, you don't need blazing speed to run past everybody. I remember, like, years ago, Michael Grabner? I think he was an Islander for a bit.
And a Leaf.
The big thing with him was he could fly. That's like, okay, that's great. But, like, if you can't do anything other than fly, like, that is rendered irrelevant. So I agree with you with David Krejci. I want to get into some more questions because some of these questions we've kind of touched on, but I want to dive deeper into them. But first, it's Prize Picks time. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 18 million users and sign up today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks, they put you first. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. And when my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Court, it's funny with Bruins, it's tough because the 5-on-5 scoring and the scoring in general has been sort of all over the place. But if you feel like Marchand and Pastrnak are turning a new leaf, maybe you go more than 0.5 goals or 0.5 points for either of those guys. Nothing wrong with that there. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win. to receive the $50 bonus because it's guaranteed. So download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. So, questions time. There was a good one about Lindholm. I want to get to Sacco's future because Mark Allred asked an interesting question about that. I want to save that though because this goes along with Lindholm. Chad McVeigh asks, so far, this is interesting. Who has won the Lindholm and Zadorov versus DeBrusk, Heinen, and Forbert Bruins Canucks swap? All moved as free agents, but would you make this trade? I mean, I think if last offseason you'd say, duh, I make that trade every time. DeBrusk has heated up recently. Like, I think that, he has. I think he's 20 points in 24 games.
10 goals, I think.
Yeah, he had a hat trick the other day on Sunday. Forbert's been hurt, I believe, and Heinen has like 10 points. Zadorov.
I still love Heinen. I want him back.
Heinen was great. Like I was in the camp, and I still am, of you need to find the next Heinen. And I thought Tyler Johnson might be that, and he just really hasn't been at all.
Hey, Sacco doesn't seem to like him.
No, it wasn't in the lineup. Hasn't been in the lineup very long at all. But I do wonder. I mean, I think long term you make that move. Long term you make.
I think playoffs.
You better make that move. You got those guys locked up a long time.
Playoffs Lindholm.
Yes,
and it is worth it. Even though playoff Jake DeBrusk is great against the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, that's where he was.
But just for some reason, just not against the Florida Panthers. I think Lindholm is your better choice if you think this team is going to make the playoffs. Zadorov, man, he's so good when he's on the ice under Sacco's system. He was terrible under Montgomery's system.
Awful.
And he's also known as a guy that like fights back to coaches and the systems. I don't know if anybody knows that, but he's kind of a rebel when it comes to not doing what he's told to do. But he's got to stay out of the box.
Well, remember when Montgomery made that comment about like, yeah, he doesn't really take to the systems, or he's got kind of
he said that about almost everybody though. Jesus.
Yeah, but he really implied that Zadorov was sort of uncoachable.
Yes,
and I found
what
that
it sounded like.
Telling. Like that is and especially Montgomery, who didn't really ever reveal his cards on a lot of guys to the media. Say that about a guy you signed for 6 years in the first month was a choice. And that, maybe it was.
He made a lot of choices. I think we could go down the cornucopia of like, did he really want to be here anymore? And then Sweeney's comment, if people don't want to be here, they're not going to be here. And he gets fired like a week later. I'm just like, Jesus.
Well, I also it goes back to Court, like the fact that they went into this year without him on a deal. Like they
did that to Bruce though.
What year was that? I forget.
Bruce's last year here in Boston. The summer he was going into his last year. When Sweeney showed up at his house that summer, he did not have an extension. So he was going into his lame duck year. He only had 1 year left on his deal.
I must have known that at the time. Maybe I'm forgetting it. It's been a long time now.
Wow. Julian had a year left on his deal when he was
let go.
But
so it's still not great to go into a year.
It was known that Bruce was going to take Julian's job. All he had to do was screw up. And at the beginning of this year, when they named Sacco the associate coach, I was like, Montgomery's fired. Wow.
That, and they went out and got Leach from Seattle, who they'd interviewed for Montgomery's job two years ago. And so that's why to me, like I kept asking higher ups, Don Sweeney and at those press conferences about this, because I was like, everyone's focused on Swayman, and that's obviously the biggest story for sure. But the head coach is not here past this year. He's had a very wonky playoff record the last 2 years. I mean, truly like incredibly high highs and incredibly low lows. And you didn't bring him up. Like Bruce at least came up through this system. And we'll get to that in a bit when we talk about like Sacco. Montgomery came in on the outside. He's an outsider. Like he didn't have his own staff.
He was a Band-Aid because a decision was made that the GM didn't want to make and didn't think he was going to make. Let's be honest. So they had to fill the gap and they went for the next best. And I doubt the other guy that wanted the other guy gone even liked the choice. And it didn't seem like he did, because that guy never really said a lot of nice things even about Montgomery in the press. So I was just like, you have your president of hockey ops not really behind your coach ever. So you're a dead man walking all the time.
And I think it was, I believe, I think it was this. I don't want to mix up the press conferences. If it was the end of season one last year, or the one before this year with Neely, Sweeney, Montgomery, and Charlie Jacobs. And Jacobs gave Neely and Sweeney this big, we're fully behind them, a grade A seal of approval. And it just, to me, never felt like Montgomery was part of that crew. And maybe it's because he hasn't been here or he hadn't been here that long. But I never felt like he was the long-term guy. I
When he
just
lost in the first
didn't.
round against Florida and he got outcoached, and let's be honest, he got
He
outcoached.
did. He did.
Paul
It
Maurice, he
doomed
got
him.
outcoached. And in fairness to Claude and Bruce, they would lose, but they never got outcoached.
No, not to no. Like,
No, even with the Ottawa series, I know Ottawa
oh, I don't
was
even count. That series was the Bruins had that was like the Providence Bruins playing this
exactly
at the
because they were
time.
stretching the Bruins out, and even trying to coach to not let you get stretched out, there was nothing you can do because Eric Carlson decided I'm just going to be Magic Man.
That was
But
incredible.
I'm
And they
saying,
won game one. Remember, they won game one of that series.
but I really think that Montgomery's been out coached 2 years in a row. He's lucky he faced Keith last year in the playoffs. Montgomery and Keith are very similar, and they stick to, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and this is my battle plan, and I ain't going to change it. I'll change up lines, but my system and what we're out to do, I'm not gonna make adjustments throughout the game, and that you can't do that in the playoffs.
I also look at I wonder how much this offseason Sweeney, Neely, and the front office looked and said, okay, we're in a division with now Craig Berube with the Leafs. We're with John Cooper with the Lightning and Paul Maurice with the Panthers. We're gonna have to go through two of them to get
Tough.
to
You're
the
going
conference
through tough
final.
coaches. You're going through
Yes.
coaches that you fired one to bring in a guy that was kumbaya and realizing that just made it worse. And now what is every team around the league doing? They're like, no more players, coaches. Like,
No,
the fact that Jake DeBrusk signed with the Vancouver Canucks was probably the funniest signing ever in the history of the NHL. He went from, I don't like being told what to do, to, I have one of the toughest coaches in the league, which is
yeah,
hilarious.
but he's closer to home, so there is
Well,
that.
if we
Which
go back
no
to the
one's
question,
surprised.
I wouldn't make the trade solely based on what the Bruins need now. But I also look at Derek Forbert hasn't been healthy. Like, it's easy to say, I'm not going to make it now. I just think they never replaced DeBrusk. And that's unfortunate. I think, and people will probably vilify me, I don't think the Zadorov signing needed to be done. I think they should have signed Heinen like they were going to. And they definitely had an offer on the table. And definitely when Zadorov became available, they definitely took it off the table. But they could have signed Heinen and somebody else, and they could have replaced that scoring from DeBrusk. And I don't think we would have had the start we would have had. Even though I think the train was off the tracks at the very beginning of camp when you have Pastrnak coming in injured and coming back from rehab, and you have Marchand coming back and not full percent. So you have your two best players that are playing half a body and didn't start playing well till like 2 weeks ago. And then you have your number one goalie being vilified by the president of the hockey ops in public. And then him saying, well, he started it like he's 12. Like,
It
that's
was a
literally, and you're literally the punchline of every single joke in Toronto. Like, it's the hockey hub here. And people can say it or whatever, but that's all it is on the radio here. And they're talking hockey and they talk about every team. And the Boston
It's
Bruins
not the way it
were,
is down here at all.
I know, I'm well aware. The
It's
Boston
not.
Bruins were a punchline,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
big time. And that's not going to go over well.
So what I will add to your thing about this hypothetical trade that Chad brought up, um, I agree with you in how they should have gone about this offseason. Lindholm was the right signing. I think we
Yes.
all were on board with that. Zadorov was the one where I think everybody looked and said, "Do you really need that?" Now, if the playoffs come around and he is what they think he can be, then I will gladly sit here and be like, "Good signing. That's what you needed." But I was more in favor of go out and get a veteran. Like, I looked at a Brendan Dillon. I kept thinking that's a guy I would love who's not going to cost what Zadorov's going to cost and leaves you enough wiggle room to maybe go out and get a replacement for DeBrusk. Like I always said, Duclair at the time. I thought Duclair would be kind of a
Yeah, I
perfect
like
fit.
Duclair or Tyler Toffoli. I've wanted Toffoli here for years. All the guy does is score goals. That's all
I
he does.
know. That's exactly what you would need. You could put him in the, you could move Pastrnak off that one timer on the power play to freshen things up
Which
and put
everybody knows they're
Toffoli
trying to
there.
do.
Yup, you could if you wanted to put him in the bumper spot. Like there's all these spots. Net front.
And you
I
could
love
add
that. And he's
Heinen
lighting
back.
it up in San Jose, by the way. He's lighting it up in San
And
Jose.
Heinen could be your second line winger like we all want.
That too, but I was more. I will say at the time I was way more in favor of just go out and find the next Heinen. But I agree. I don't think that's. I don't
Well,
think that's crazy.
I'll say this. Heinen was prepared to come back. They had a deal in place. And when they cut Zadorov, they took it off the table. He was there, and it wasn't going to cost the arm and a leg, and he wanted to be in Boston.
Do you know what the AAV was?
No. I just
Okay.
know it was like I at one point was told it was a done deal. And then literally like 2 days later, they're like, oh, he's leaving. For him, I'm happy for him. He gets to go back home. He's from Vancouver.
Yeah,
So for him, it's perfect, but he wanted to be a Boston Bruin, and he was good here. Like he was
he
so
was.
good here.
He was, and he was. And you know what? He was terrific, especially last year, given his circumstances, given coming in the way he did on a PTO and not being signed for a long time, and then
And
going out and earning it and all that and fitting in. I think he worked well under Montgomery too.
he
That was
did.
like
He works well
Montgomery
under
unlocked
every.
him.
He's an easy guy to coach. It's not hard to. I can tell you when they traded him the very first time, the coaching staff didn't want him gone. They were like, "Are you kidding me? Why are you trading this?"
Was he the Nick Ritchie trade?
Yeah, I call it the Cam Neely trade because we all know that's what it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a tough one. That's what you just took a Swiss Army knife where a coach can be like, I can plug you in anywhere. And you brought
Yeah.
me a guy that I can plug you in one spot, and if he doesn't work, we're screwed.
I liked Heinen, I do, but I still would rather go out and try to find the next Heinen for similar
Sure.
money. I think. And for
For
what this
less
team
money, you
needed.
can.
Yeah. For what
But
this
I
team
look at
needed.
Zadorov and I'm like, there's a reason that guy's bounced around the league.
That's the thing. So, but my answer is I would do that trade that Chad mentioned because Lindholm eventually I do believe is going to fit in and he's going to produce and there's going to be a return on investment. Now, what he looks like in years 5, 6, 7 of that deal, different. But for the here and now, I think at some point he is going to get activated. And Zadorov, I mean, Zadorov's been better under Sacco. And the
He's
penalties
played
are an issue. The penalties are an
unbelievably better.
issue. The penalties are an issue.
Not just an issue. I'm getting to the point where I have to like somebody like was in my comment section. And they were coming at me saying like, I can't believe what he's doing. You're going to tell him to be soft. And I was like, this is not about being soft anymore.
Not
He's being
soft.
selfish.
Yeah.
I'll give him this. When he slashed Raymond the other night, who's one of the best players in the league, so obviously he's going to get the call regardless. It was funny that Raymond got slashed on his right hand and Schick his left hand, but that doesn't matter. He definitely slashed him on the hands. He definitely deserved a penalty. He is so lucky that the refs were so brutal that night because the Red Wings were flopping all over the place like soccer players.
They were.
That the refs decided to not call the next penalty because the Red Wings had been flopping all night. Like, I truly think he got away with that second cross check. But if we have any other game, that's 4 minutes.
I thought they were going to do that. That's because
for
initially I thought that was going to be 4. So again, I mean, that's where that stuff has to be curbed, and it isn't soft. Like there's a
Nope.
way to play on the edge. There's a way to get under people's skin and do it without taking penalties.
Chara was amazing at it, and I don't
Chara
want to
was the
compare.
best. Chara was great at it. Chara was great at it.
So was Adam McQuaid, for God's sakes. Adam McQuaid is a better comparison because we don't want to compare Chara. Adam McQuaid played tough. He played hard, but he stayed out of the box.
He did. He did. And he was a hell of a fighter. Holy crap, that guy could throw bombs. Some other questions. Nick asks, what's the probability of trading Frederic? Love the guy, but he's having an abhorrent season and only truly shined last year. With Merkulov looking maxed out in the A, is it time to come up and get max value depth and or a pick for Frederic? I mean, I think it was Elliot Friedman who wrote today.
He's twice. Friedman's talked about him 3 times, twice on the podcast and now in print. That means he's out there in the market.
Yes, and The Athletic has him fairly high on the trade board. I think right after Marchand, last I checked.
Dude, when Chris Johnson put him on the trade board, I was like, that's the most clickbait thing I've ever seen from the Athletic.
Well, there's a chance,
sorry,
you know, like
there's no way he's being moved.
They won't move him.
No.
They won't move him. The Bruins will not move him. However, I think if they were terrible, if they if they got bad, I mean like lottery level bad, I think you have a legitimate case and you could
100%.
you could definitely get stuff, but they're not going to be bad. That's the thing. They're going to be they're a middle tier team. And they're not going to do it. It's like firing, so when Montgomery got fired, there were so many people saying they need to fire Don Sweeney. They need to fire Don Sweeney. And it's like, They aren't going to do it, especially right now. They continue to make the playoffs. That's not happening. It isn't. So we're not gonna spend 30 minutes on a show being like, they need to fire Sweeney because X, Y, and Z. Like, because it's not gonna happen. It just isn't. And I think it's the same with trading Marchand, where it's like we can explore the avenues. Like, we can go down that road. What could he possibly get? He would get you legitimate things, but they're not going to be rebuilding level bad. They're not going to be the Penguins. If anything, they're going to need a retool, and that's not the guy that you would deal.
But Frederic, I think, unfortunately, has looked worse under Sacco.
Yeah.
He regressed near the end of last season. I thought he could be a 20-goal guy this year, and he had fairness to Montgomery, he gave him every opportunity. So to me, I would sell high on Trent Frederic as soon as humanly possible. Try and get a piece with, you know what? I'm going to say it, who can score. If that team's looking for toughness, and I don't want to hear from people, Bruins have a ton of toughness. They don't need any more toughness.
Oh, I agree.
They
Please
could
do
move
not go out and
toughness
get
out the
another
door.
guy
Look at all the Cam Neely signings of Max Jones and everybody that they brought in this year that anybody could have said they're not going to work out tough. Like, it just wasn't going to work out. But
Nope.
Cool, they do it every year. But Trent Frederic can be moved out, and you're going to be fine. And you could actually bring in a piece. You could probably do what is called a hockey trade, where you're no longer going to be bringing in prospects or anything for the guy. Why don't you bring in a guy with a bit of term, maybe 2 years left on his deal this year and next year, and can actually score? Maybe a guy that probably got 20 goals, and the other team is looking for a tough guy to put on their third line in the playoffs. There's your deal. That can be had. There's probably guys that want out of their situation somewhere, and Trent Frederic is the perfect guy to bring in. You're not going to be looking at a team that's trying to dump players. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. And it's tough because, like, I think, like, when you look at the Bruins and where they're at, I don't think they're going to look at Frederic and say, we're going to get, a second round pick for, like, I don't think they're going to gun for that. They want to bolster this roster. They have a lot of money tied up in it. So I agree with you. I think, Diver mentioned this a while ago, and I think Vetrano is going to be a UFA at the end of this year, if memory serves.
Is he coming back? He said a lot of, I'll say this. Vetrano, on his way out the door, opened his mouth. The Bruins hate that.
I know.
He went on podcast. He said a lot of nasty things about Bruce Cassidy. Who's Bruce Cassidy's best friend? He's the coach of the Boston Bruins. I'm not saying the coaches have a say. Who's Bruce Cassidy's other best friend at the time? That was Don Sweeney. So you walked out the door in Boston and you decided to take a piss in the snow. That is never a good idea. So I think for Toronto would be perfect because I didn't want him gone in the first place. But that's a tough sell to bring that guy back when he took a pee in he put yellow snow in front of the garden, and that's a tough one.
I know, but it's been a while. If he can score goals, like, I'd be open to it.
Has it been long enough? I don't know. Cam Neely doesn't let anything go, man.
Was that 2018?
Yeah. Bruins never let things go. Ask Joe Thornton.
That's why the Swayman stuff was fascinating. The way, because there was a time that I think it was the night that Louis Gross put out that statement. I thought to myself, there's a legit chance he gets dealt. Like, because I remember Elliot Friedman wrote about it. Like, and when Friedman starts writing that stuff, it's like, damn, that's gonna happen.
I got told they were looking into it.
I don't doubt it. Because that was a circus. You look back and, like, shame on, like, I don't even say me, because at the beginning of the year, I mean, this was before the Swayman saga, so I guess not shame on me. I take that back. But, like, I had high expectations for this roster. Training camp was a circus, and it was a big part of that was the Swayman stuff. And yeah, I mean, like, the fact that they actually resolved, and he got more money, $8.25 million for 8 years. I was kind of shocked at that.
It's fascinating because, and I'm sure he was offered a deal the year before.
Yeah.
But he asked for $5 million the year before, and they didn't want to do it, and they took him to ARB. And then the Bruins had a chance to take him for 2 years, but they would have got put in. They thought they would put him in cap hell, and they didn't want to do it. So they only did the 1 year deal. But they could have done 2. Sweeney says, "Oh, I did him a favor." That's not what happened. He literally was trying to, he was trying to cap himself and make sure he's fine cap wise. He didn't think it was going to be aggregate the way it was. I think Neely doesn't say anything in that press conference. we wouldn't have had the circus we had. Soon as yes, he goes on that podcast and whatever, Shut Up Mark or whatever it's called. Um, Still weird. Of all the podcasts you go on, that's the
I
one you
know.
go
Come
on.
on. There's all these Bruins podcasts. Come on,
Well,
one of
not even
ours.
that. Like, there's all these other. It's just so weird. But anyways, and then he says what he says, but I don't take what he said as bad. As someone who has a very much a player's perspective, I grew up around the game. I totally get what he was saying. I want to get my money because the players, as much as people don't want to hear it, the players don't get their bag like we think they do compared to what the owners make and what the league
No,
makes and so on
they
and so
don't.
forth.
They don't.
So Cam Neely saying what he said in that press conference, I still believe that that was the first time anybody had heard that offer. And then when he made that, I think that put them in a situation where Don Sweeney was like, you just, if I trade Jeremy Swayman right now, my room is going to hate us.
Yeah, you couldn't have, especially like because then you would have looked at it and said you dealt Allmark and now you dealt Swayman, and 3 months after you have the best goalie tandem in the league, you have neither guy. It wasn't gonna ever. They were never. I don't
No,
think they were ever actually gonna trade him. Like
no,
maybe
but
look
like
into it, but yeah,
Cam Neely has an ego and it is what it is. Um, I was laughing at the Centennial game, just him going and shaking hands with some of those former players. And it's like, wow, I wonder how many people are telling him to F off while they're doing that. But it's just it's very telling. I just thought there was too much of a soap opera, and I think that Sacco settled this down because he's been with the team long enough. Him and Marchand were probably went to the room. We're like, hey, forget that noise. Let's just be us again. Let's do our thing. I know a buddy of mine was met up with Pastrnak just recently in Toronto, and Pasta made a joke like, "No one likes to have fun anymore." Like he was sitting in the hotel bar lobby by himself till 11 o'clock drinking because none of them, everybody else on the team was like, "Oh, I got to do this." No one comes out and does anything. I know when um, the team used to come to Toronto, and I was able to like sometimes meet up with them. They would all go out as a group. And a friend of mine who was at the hotel was like, "No, it was weird." I was like, "Really?" He's
that's
like, "Yeah, it was."
odd.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The NHL's changed and you hear this a lot on podcasts lately. Like the new NHL, these guys are all just like they stay in their rooms. It's weird. The camaraderie's got to come back. And Marchand said it the other day. We're starting to have fun again, as he said in that interview. And his
yes,
interview on TNT was fantastic.
they were great.
He said they're starting to have fun again on that team.
I don't know how like it's an 82 game schedule, and this is a whole nother topic, but like 82 game schedule. I get being locked in. I get being, we got to go to bed at a certain time.
11 o'clock.
Yep. But also, like, you're on the road. Sometimes you have to have a little fun. Sometimes you got to let off a little steam.
Yeah, it's
I mean, you
not
even
being
look at like
bad, just having fun.
the Colby Armstrong story he always tells of McDonald's with Sidney Crosby. And Crosby like comes, he thinks he's asleep, and Crosby comes in and says, do you get me anything? Like, you have to be able to have a little fun. You have to be able to have a little fun. Look at this is a wild comparison, but look at Phil Kessel all those years. Like, oh, I feel like shit today, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes out and scores 2 goals. Like, these are high-end athletes. Sometimes you have to have a little fun.
Look at Ovechkin. The best was that Bruce Boudreau story where Ovechkin's at the club and you hear like the beats going on in the background. He's like, "Yeah, I'm in my room, coach." Like
I didn't hear that.
Mike,
I did not hear that story.
yeah, it was just recently on Chicklets. They had him on. Chicklets. They had Merrick as a guest host, and he brought on Gabby on, and then they talked about this Ovechkin story where they called Ovechkin and he was in the club and he knew it, but he's his best player. So Gabby was just like, "All right, cool. Yep, you told me you're in your room." And I know like Koska, my cousin grew up with him and he used to play for the Leafs. And every now and then we would go out with them after. And we would go to this place called the Underground in Toronto. And like the guys would have fun, but like 1 o'clock, they were all going to bed. But they would have as much fun up to that time.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's not like it was not like it was debauchery, but they were just having fun. Like it's just I think they need to have fun again. And it sounds like they are. It sounds like the leadership group was like, yeah, we got to have fun again because I know when I used to see those guys at the hotels and stuff in the lobby, they were all thick as thieves, like all of them, like that team with like Bacchus, Bergeron, Pasta, Marchand, like when Pasta like rolled his ankle at the charity event. Uh, um, yeah,
I remember that.
they had fun, those guys, but they also won hockey games. And I don't know, man. Maybe get the fun back in. Look at a guy like Connor Bedard right now. He ain't having any fun.
Oh, no. Oh my God, that looks like a bad situation. Speaking of fun court, You know what's fun for fans? To go to games. And if you're going to games, you're going to use Game Time because there's nothing like watching a live sporting event. The energy in the building, the sounds on the ice, the memories you make with family, friends, and other fans, it's unmatched. And the coolest part is when strangers sitting around you become your best friends. And you can make these memories with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. When I use Game Time, I love the flash deals, which help me get discounted prices on really good seats. Plus, who doesn't love seat views, which give a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy? So, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app and create an account and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, download the Game Time app, and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Court, what time is it?
Game time. Do you
It's
know what that's
game
from?
time. Game
Do you know
time?
do you know what time it is? Game time. Do you know what that's from?
I feel, isn't that just a generic statement?
Chicago Bulls, 1990s, when they were winning all their championships. Michael
Oh,
Jordan used to always say before the game, "Do you know what time it is?" And everybody would yell, "Game time."
I didn't realize. I watched
Yeah,
Last
Chicago
Dance too.
Bulls.
I didn't realize that. Well,
Yeah,
there
it's
you go.
definitely the Bulls. It was like a thing. Like I'm older, so like growing up in that time, we all used to say that. Like if you were playing any sport, because like Jordan would say it all the time. But I always find it funny anytime someone talks about that. How long did it take for someone to take a photo in every single one of those seats in the arena to give that view of where that seat is? That would have
I
took a lot
know.
of effort.
I know. Good
A
for
lot of
them.
effort.
They that's a lot of effort. I give them credit. Other trade questions, because then I want to get into the big Sacco question, because that's going to be something I think both you and you with Bruins Diehards, um, discuss over the next bunch of months, next half year, of Sacco, whether or not he's the guy. James asks, "Hi Evan, B's desperate for another scoring winger. If Geeky was a third liner with Frederic and Coyle, that's a better fit. Who could they find to fit with Pasta and or Zaka, or move Zaka to wing and bring up Patra?" I think we've kind of hit on this. Like my whole thing, Court, is like they obviously need a score. No doubt, but that's going to cost you money. And I don't know, like, if you can move Frederic for a higher end
Salary for
offensive.
salary.
Yep. Like, if you can make that work, and like, I look at sort of like the Zaka Hala trade a few years ago, where like you
Perfect
took a
trade.
guy, you sold high on Hala, and you traded him for a guy with a higher ceiling that had come nowhere close to hitting that. You're not really selling high on Frederic because he's having a brutal year. But if you can somehow make that work, like the Ducks are an interesting team because they have so much skill that has come up, and they don't have much grit up front, at least. I mean, they have Gudis in the back end, but like, maybe they would feel like a Frederic would help them, and you could get like, I don't know if I want Zegras. That's the other thing.
I don't
Like,
see Zegras working in Boston.
I don't think it would either. But like,
His personality in that dressing room would not go over well.
I mean, so I don't know if you've been seeing this, but all over Twitter recently, like just the amount of Ducks fans being like, "Look how depressed he is." Like he scores goals and he just kind of like saunters back to the bench. I do wonder if that joy sort of needs to come back. I don't know
He
if
needs to
this is the
leave.
market
Zegras needs to leave.
completely. And I think it's funny because like 2 years ago, that's a guy, and this is another reason why rebuilds.
What's he making? I'll look it up while you're talking.
I think it's like 5.
Ah,
But like
okay.
so there's a couple things with Zegras. I mean, number one, I think it's a great example of why rebuilds are very risky because you can see how things can change in an instant. I mean, 2 years ago he's on the cover of NHL. He is like the face of the league. Everyone's highlight reel, this and that.
Ooh,
And now he's
5.7.
that's a lot of
Oh,
money for him for 10
for
points
this year and next.
for 10 points this year.
A lot.
The other thing though is I remember my first year in my current job as editor of New England Hockey Journal, I come across a lot of NHL scouts at different events. And one thing I consistently heard, this was 22-23, was how much the league hated Zegras, how much they hated the kind of player he was, and how much they didn't like how players coming up were kind of idolizing him. And it was only like a little bit of time because no one's idolizing Trevor Zegras.
That's a weird
now.
thing for someone to say about the league when the league would probably like any publicity is good publicity. I think it was the old school NHL guys that did
it was. And I think that's sort of what's gotten in with him where like, those moves and things have sort of left his game and the confidence is gone. I don't know. Like I'm with you. I don't think this is the market where like that confidence comes back. I mean, he did play at Avon, which is, in the same
But can he play
region.
wing? Because they don't need him to play center.
That's the thing. Can he play wing? I don't know. I don't think
Like,
he can.
I think if any team culture, like I've heard this from players that have played here, my dad even, this culture in this locker room has been there for years. So people always say, "Oh, Bergeron and Marchand." No, Boston Bruins have had culture. The way the Bruins do their room and do their culture in their room, they've been doing it since the Rick Middleton, Terry O'Reilly days. It's just they've always done this. Bobby Orr, like they've always been that team that is very close. Except for maybe in the '90s when you had Thornton, Samsonov, and I think they lost a bit of it. Let's be
They
honest, they
did.
lost
They
a bit,
did
but
at the end.
they did, and unfortunately, they got it all back. I think Thornton, Scott Thornton, he brought it all back. He brought that back, and Mark Recchi, they brought that culture back and brought it back into the team. I think Zegras could, if he's willing to play wing, but then the Anaheim also has to eat some salary here because you
Yep.
can't take any back.
No, you can't.
Like
You can't. You're
I'm
not
sure
giving
if
up any
Sweeney
other
wanted
pieces.
to
You're
take
not
one
giving up any other
back, he
pieces.
wouldn't sign Johnson.
Correct. Yep.
He signed him
have
out of
that.
desperation.
Yep, and you'd have that. And that was sort of like try to spark the team, and it didn't work at all because Johnson really has not done much at all. So,
No, and I don't think Sacco likes him too much. So I look at Anaheim. I'm on Puckpedia right now, and I'm like, okay, Anaheim don't work because Strom's too old
yep.
for what you're looking at. So then you look at, okay, Islanders. Brock Nelson would be great, but he's also a centerman.
Someone asked somewhere here about Brock Nelson. I don't know
He'd be
where
amazing.
it went. Yeah,
But
what
you're
would the
gonna
Bees have
have
to
to
give up for
move.
Brock Nelson?
You're gonna
Who
have
would
to
they?
move someone on the back end because the Islanders, they're not doing a 1-for-1 Brock Nelson for Trent Frederic. And you can't move
No,
picks and prospects because you need to move out salary. So who you giving up
and
that
you
is
need those.
salary going the
You
other
need
way?
those picks and prospects. That's the other part of it too. You need those picks and
And
prospects.
if you're Lou Lamoriello, he's going to ask for Justin Brazeau, and I wouldn't do it. He's a guy playing well for you.
Yeah, and he's younger than Nelson, so like you also have that too. Like age
You
is a big
do
part
have
here.
Oliver Wahlstrom, who has speed, shoots
Frontman.
right, but I feel like he's just a younger version of Johnson.
Yeah,
It's tough, man. It's not. There's not a lot of pieces out there right now. Like
no, there
I'll
aren't
say this: they won the Ottawa Senators trade, that Allmark trade. They did great on it.
so far. Yeah, so far, yeah. And Letourneau, I mean, again, I always tell people like Letourneau's going to be a long time. That's not going to be something that in the next 2 years we're even going to have the verdict on. That's going to take time for him up here. But the fact that Kastelik has provided the boost he's given you, and the fact that Korpisalo has worked out the way he has, you should be doing You should be friggin' doing backflips about getting that. And Omar struggled, which again, like new goalies, it takes time in new places, but he struggled. He struggled up there. He's fortunate he signed that contract extension when he did. Holy
Seriously, well, he was
crap.
playing well. Jesus, oof. I got to see Letourneau play a lot last year, where he was. That's right around the corner from me in Newmarket.
Oh, it is? I saw him
Yeah,
when he was
yeah.
down here a bunch.
Yeah, I don't live in Newmarket, but it's real close where he was last year. I get to see him a lot at St. Andrews College. It's very close. My cousin was coaching hockey around there, so they would be playing. So I would go check him out every now and then. So that I was one of the please pick him, please pick him. He was someone I actually watched last year.
Yeah,
But
because I watched him a bunch down here too, and I was like, man, imagine if they actually like Mark Diver and I used to joke at games last year, like, oh, it's unfortunate we see so much of Letourneau and the Bruins don't have a first round pick, like we don't even get a chance to like, and then they actually ended up taking him because they get a first and they pick him at the end of the first. So I was in support of the move. Take a swing. That's a swing. That's a swing for the
big swing.
fences. It's a big ass swing, and I'm you know what, I'm for it. Talk about other moves that people are mentioning. So Eric 8 asks, does Hampus Lindholm get traded the second he comes off IR, considering
No.
how well they've played without him lately? No, not at all.
Your power play sucks. Guess what? When he's back, your power play won't suck anymore. He was actually the power play started.
Top.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, Sacco, there's no way he's not going to. When he was there for that short one game, the power play started zipping the puck around again. Hampus Lindholm is a very good quarterback on the power play.
He is. And he's also a stable defenseman back there. And like when we were talking about Kreider, right, which that's never really going to happen because I think that was completely smoked by the Rangers, but like it's out there. So we talked about it. And obviously, like I do think Kreider would help you. We were looking like the Rangers are not going to take on picks and prospects, and they're not going to take on like a package highlighted by like Trent Frederic. They're going to want a Zacha, or they're going to want a Hampus Lindholm,
or Brandon Carlo. Like they're going to want a piece coming back.
Yes, they want something legit because you're getting something legit. That's how.
And on the back end,
everybody
they're going to move Trouba. So That's what you need to help them on the back end, and you're giving up a piece in your top 4.
And I don't want to give up Hampus Lindholm yet. I know he's been shaky in the playoffs. Of all the roster players we just mentioned, right? Zacha's Pasternak's guy, so I don't think it's ever going to happen. Carlo, I just love the shutdown part of his game, and I do think he's a legitimate leader in that room. Lindholm's been a little shaky in the playoffs last couple of years. He did have that goal, obviously, that saved Montgomery's job last spring. So there was that. But like of the 3, I think
the assist on the goal
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. I forgot about the assist too. Don't sleep on that. Mm-hmm. So, but of those 3, I think I'd be the most open to trading him, but I still wouldn't want to. So I would not be shopping Hampus Lindholm. Let me see other trades because then I want to get into the Joe Sacco. I keep teasing the Joe Sacco thing. Greg Durant asked, "What's the move at the deadline? The cup window is closing quickly, and we need to go all in my opinion." I don't.
You're not all in this year.
No, you're not all in, and I don't think the cup window stuff like that. We talked about that a lot around 2019, 2020, 2021, 22, and 23 when Bergeron was here. I think that window is gone. I think you're sort of in a new window. You're almost kind of between windows. Like, I don't think like
you're standing there with a screen in the window. The window is not closing, but there's a screen in it right now.
There's a screen, but I also think like, okay, so your core foundational players, like the foundational players of the 2010s were Chara, Rask, Bergeron, and Marchand worked his way into that.
And
right now, and Krejci, forgot about Krejci. Now, which is sad. Your future is, as of right now, Pastrnak, McAvoy, Swayman, and you have guys like Elias Lindholm signed long term and things like that. But like they're here for a while. Like that, the window with those 3-4 guys is not closing anytime soon. Are the guys around them the right fit, which is where sort of the idea of a retool comes in, which is exactly why I wouldn't go all in, because all in would be trading a first, which you don't want to do. Just giving away.
Yeah, I don't see them trading a first. They worked so hard to get one last year. I see Trent Frederic being traded 100%.
Agreed.
I don't think he's coming back. I don't think Sacco is a fan anyways. I think his day is done. I think Elliot Friedman talking about him 3 times in the last 3 weeks. He's on the market.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
100%, especially him. And I think it'll be a hockey trade because you're not trading him for picks. You're trading him for another player because Boston's not going to just give up unless you're not in the playoffs. If you're not in the playoffs, you're going to try your best and hopefully a team overpays for him and you get a first rounder, but you probably get a second rounder for him or a prospect in a second round. That's probably what you get for him. You're not going to get back what you used to get him. You reached when you picked him, and it's on you for doing that in the first place. And then you look at the rest of the roster. Brazo's just playing too well, but he's also very valuable.
And you'd be selling high. That's the key, right? Like you would be selling high on a guy who came in here with no expectations. You picked him out of the AHL, and you found a diamond.
You can get more for him than you can for Frederic.
100%. Yeah, he's a big guy, and what's funny is he's not uber physical. It's not like this guy who's going to go out there and drop guys for his size. Like, but he's skilled. He's good around the net. He's got a good stick. Like that's a guy who is. Unicorn is thrown around a lot, and unicorn is for like, you're like Victor Wembanyama's, but like small version of a unicorn, Justin Brazeau. Like, I agree with you.
He never hurts you when he's on the ice. He doesn't get penalties.
No. Like, and the thing with Frederic, what I find interesting, and this is where like Elliot Friedman keeps touching on, his teams really like his upside of like power forward type. If you can get a team to bite on that, like Connor's mentioned this a few times over the last couple of weeks, the Tanner Jeannot trade package. If you can do that, yeah, please. I just wonder if they're going to be unwilling to deal guys like that for picks and prospects because
it depends on where they are, but I can't see them not dealing Frederic at this point.
I can't either.
Like he's got a friend of mine who I talked to a lot. He really likes him, and I was like, dude, he's gone. Like he's the most gone on this roster. He's playing like he's gone. He is playing like Montgomery was coaching. He knew he was on his way out, and it is what it is. I know. It's funny because like coming into this year, I really had high expectations for him because I was like, it's a contract year, and he's been great the last 2 years. This would solidify. Is he going to work his way into the top 6 and try to prove that he's a top 6 guy so he gets paid in the offseason? And then I assumed if he did that a team would come along and actually just sign him for a ton, and you wouldn't get anything for him in a trade, but you'd have a good final year from him, and it just hasn't been the case. So I think you're probably going to end up dealing him. When are you finally going to get Connor and Ty back for always being the punchline of their jokes?
It's a great question. I don't know.
Hey,
I'm
well,
planning something big.
I have a joke all the time that Evan and Connor are the same person, but hey, whatever.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you haven't seen us in the same room together,
No,
so
no, pokeroo.
maybe. Are there 9.5 million reasons that McAvoy is still on the power play? And
Oh,
then
I hate talking about contracts.
is the contract the only reason he's there? There hasn't
No,
been any production in 3 years with him as QB1.
he shouldn't be there. I think he was there because Montgomery was stubborn and he wanted him there. McAvoy has never been to me, he has been that two-way. He's a unicorn. As much as people want to I think people get mad at McAvoy now because they think he's supposed to get points. What McAvoy is supposed to do is not let people score when he's on the ice and still at every now and then chip in offensively out of nowhere. And you're like, what, where did this guy come from? Can get 2 goals out of nowhere, but he's never going to be the Brian Leach that everybody thinks he is. He's not Brian Leach.
No.
He's more Brad Park than Brian Leach.
I know. And it's tough because, like, I remember a couple years ago when he was really coming onto the scene, you kept saying, and we all kept saying, there's more offensive upside. And I do think, like, he should be a 55 point a year guy. Like,
Sure, I
that's
agree.
great. That's great for what he gives you. Like, that's terrific. I think the power play would be a great source for him to get a lot more points and get way higher in the Norris. And not that that's everything, but generationally, I think that would help. But when you have guys like Quinn Hughes, Adam Fox, Cale Makar, Victor Hedman, Roman Josi, Miro Heiskanen, all these different guys, you blend more into the top 10 and you'll get Norris votes, but it would take a year where you figure it out on the power play, and the power play gets you 20 extra points on assists and goals that sneak in.
I just think he makes bad decisions when he's on the point. When
Yeah.
not when he's 5-on-5, when especially because, like, I thought at the beginning of the year he was overcompensating for Zadorov's lack of getting back and lack of positioning, and McAvoy looked bad because he's literally playing 2 positions at once. But I think his issue on the power play is his first pass is not the right one. It's like Pasta could be open on the side and he puts it on the half wall to Marchand, who's got 2 guys on him. And I'm just like, what, where was that? And I don't know what it is, because when it's 5-on-5, he's bebotting and scatting all over the place, as George Costanza would love to say. But for some reason on the power play, he is brutal. Like, he makes bonehead decision after bonehead decision. He is Torrey Krug at the end of his career. When Torrey Krug was at the beginning of the power play, he was fantastic. And then all of a sudden he became the guy that was going to give you that terrible pass across the other way to send the other team the other way and have a shorthanded goal chance almost every single time for some reason, because he always tried to make that pass to the other side for no reason whatsoever. And McAvoy always tries to do a stretch pass, and it doesn't need to happen. He looks for Pastrnak and only Pastrnak, and he's got tunnel vision. And it is what it is.
Teams know that's happening, and teams know McAvoy's not shooting the puck. So it aids them, it helps them defend their own zone much easier. We touched on, do you think Pastrnak will get back to his game anytime soon?
I think so. He's an elite hockey player. I don't care what anybody says. He's one of the best in the league.
He'll be
what it is.
He'll be fine. So, and then someone asked about someone else. Tim Ford asked, we saw some solid success with Marchand and Pastrnak pairing together last night. Do we think Sacco continues with that? We already kind of touched on that. What else do we have here? Because then we'll get to the Sacco stuff. Any updates on the hamster?
Weeks.
Meaning Hampus Lindholm, and should Zadorov start seeing some more time on power play, playing a similar role Chara used to? Maybe he means in front of the net, which would be wild.
Brazo would be a way better choice.
Way better. That'd be wild if they put Zadorov in front of the net. It's like the best one with Chara in front of the net was that Bergeron goal to tie the game late against Toronto in Game 7 in 2013. Chara's in front of the net there.
Yeah.
I always love that.
I think there's a difference. Chara is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Zadorov is
not.
Oh,
no, I'm not advocating for
So I get it. It's unfortunate, and we do it a lot as hockey fans. It's that comparison thing that we do.
Yes.
We're this guy is this guy. Well, he's not
to. Rye Guy asks, are you a Loge or balcony guy? I'm a balcony guy. Any other sport, I want to be close. Hockey, I want to be up high. I want to see the whole surface. I want to see the breakouts develop. I want to see things happening at different ends of the ice. Loge, being close to the ice, it's cool. You're near the action. But like, I remember a couple of years ago, one of my friends is a season ticket holder, and they have they have a website where you can like swap tickets, and someone put up their tickets for like 3 rows. It was actually Cassidy's first game back in Boston with the Knights, and we were 3 rows behind one of the nets, and it's cool. But
that's
I'm also
like the worst seat because you're behind the net.
Yeah, and it was in the corner too.
Oof.
So it's like, this is tough because like I can't see the other end of the ice. I don't know, like I can't fully see. I can't see the depth. I'm a balcony guy. What about you?
As someone, I'll only use the Garden because I've been to a lot of rinks, but I'll use the Garden as an example. The ninth floor is phenomenal. The view.
Oh, I love it. I
It
absolutely love it.
because you can see plays develop. As a hockey purist, I love the view there. But if I am going to the game, and I've sat in the boxes there, which is right by where the Nesson broadcast is, you still get a great view there. But I feel it's very stuffy. I'll say it. It feels very stuffy when you're in that section because you feel like you're the bougie guy and no one else is in there, and you literally get your own they give you your own elevator up to that section now. Like it's very bougie. I've sat down low as well, but I've also sat up at the top. So in 2019, I got tickets. They're very expensive. When I saw you, I paid to be sitting up top. I like those seats up in top. I thought they were very good because I could see the whole ice. I'm with you. If you are not center ice in the loge, that sucks because
I
you
agree.
have an obstructed view as much as you don't realize that it's like going to the outdoor game at Fenway. It is very cool to be there, but the view stinks.
I completely agree. I sat Ty Anderson, so this goes back to the butt of the jokes. Ty Anderson gave me free preseason tickets because he was trying to get rid of them, and they were like Loge, row 10, center ice, like right at the red line, and it was unbelievable. I was like, this is perfect, but those are a lot of money during the
Yeah.
season. And I agree with you. Like when I sit in the press box, it's perfect. That
Yeah,
is I
great
love
seats.
that.
There's a reason why
I
the
love
press
that.
sit up there. It's not because they want to make more money off. They do want to make more money off the people sitting down below.
They
But
do.
it's also because if you're sitting up in that press box, you can see everything and you can see a play develop. You see everything.
Damn right. Damn right. What else do we have? We touched. Mr. Antisocialite asked about single largest factor in the Bruins' recent success under Joe Sacco. That we've already discussed that. But Mark Allred asks: Is Sacco the guy for the Bruins' future, or is he just a placeholder for a domino that might fall soon in Pittsburgh concerning head coach Mike Sullivan? Here's what I'll say about Sacco.
Bruins
And
fans and having a guy from Boston. But
I
continue.
Sacco, well, because Sacco's from Boston. What
No,
I
I
think
know,
is,
but Mike Sullivan
I
back to
know.
the Bruins. Like, geez, his son-in-law plays on this team, people.
That would be an incredible talk about a
It
great
would be
storyline.
terrible for
Talk
McAvoy,
about a
but continue.
great
Yeah.
storyline.
Mhm.
Sacco, I find fascinating, and it kind of goes back to Cassidy. And what's funny is when Sacco got promoted, I saw a lot of people really down on it. Of oh my god, this guy was bad in Colorado, which he also wasn't. I mean,
He
the
wasn't bad
last
in
2 years
Colorado.
weren't great, but like that first year was
And
phenomenal.
the team stunk.
And the team was bad. That was right before they really bottomed out. And there is something to be said. There's a lot to be said for guys like Sacco and Cassidy, and there are lots of others who spend years either in the AHL as a head coach or as an assistant. And the reality is Joe Sacco, since 2014, 10 years, has been on staff with Claude Julien, Bruce Cassidy, Jim Montgomery, who are all great coaches.
He's learned from very good people.
Great people, and seen what's worked and what hasn't. And put this out of hockey, whether it's you work as a lawyer and you're in a law firm, or you're at a doctor's practice, or you're in business or finance, or whatever you are, you work at Target, whatever it is. When you watch other people, it's not just what you like that is good. It's what you don't like and what you don't want to do. And he has seen 3 different coaches over 10 years. It's almost a
He's
generation,
worked with 3 consecutive Jack Adams winners.
and learned what he likes and what he doesn't like, and
Yep.
combines that, and has spent enough time building relationships with guys and all that stuff. Not to mention he's from here. He gets it on a level I don't think Montgomery really did.
Montgomery
Like
felt like he didn't
Cassidy
want to
did.
be here this year at all.
Well, that was the other thing. But so my point is, I would not be shocked if Sacco works out. I wouldn't
I
be
think he
playing
does
to this
work out.
identity. I agree. That's what I mean. I wouldn't be shocked by it. I wouldn't be shocked if he works out. Now, are they going to look outside? Are they going to maybe, are they evaluating other candidates? Of course they are. That's what any organization does. But it would not shock me if it's July and we get the notification of Joe Sacco signed a 3-year deal. He's the next.
I wouldn't
head
be
coach of the
shocked.
Bruins.
One, I don't think Mike Sullivan's getting fired. It ain't his fault that the Pittsburgh Penguins stink.
That
I think
roster
Mike
is.
Sullivan gets to decide whether he no longer has a job in Pittsburgh or not.
I agree.
If he was going to be the coach of the Boston Bruins, not that they would do tampering, but I think he would have been able. They would have been able to talk to him through family members that are playing on the team. He would have
Who?
been there. He would have been there already. Two, Why is Sullivan better than Sacco? Why? Because Sullivan coached Providence years ago? Cool. I don't know. Sacco, I like what you just said, how Sacco, one, has learned from unbelievable coaches. He has been in the AHL. He's seen it all. He's also seen these specific players
I
like
know.
Pastrnak, who's played better under Sacco than he's played in a couple years. So I think Sacco, as long as the team continues to play like they are, which is Boston Bruins hockey. We haven't seen Boston Bruins hockey all year until Sacco took over. It was great to see, forecheck, back check. We saw it all. It was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, we're watching. I know it can get boring, especially that Detroit game. Like that was like watching paint dry. But
Get ready for that, people. By the way, that's
exactly.
not going away.
But they can win hockey games that way. They don't
That's what it
have the
takes.
talent to play run and gun. They're going to lose every single time. This Bruins team does not have the talent, but they have enough talent to be good enough. And I think Sacco makes them good enough, and bringing in Mike Sullivan ain't going to give him an extra 2 wins over what Sacco has right now. And Sacco knows the Bruins system better than anybody else out there right now.
So I mean, again, like if Sacco bottoms out and is terrible over these next couple months, I think it's a different thing. I mean, Sullivan does have 2 cups. He's coaching that Team USA 4 Nations team. Like he's a great coach. No doubt Mike Sullivan is
Fantastic coach.
one of the best coaches in the NHL.
Would you want to be coached by your father-in-law?
Well, that's the other problem. That's the problem. I don't know how you navigate that. And anybody who says like, "Oh, they can put it aside." No. That's a big deal. Like
Huge
that's
deal.
legitimate. That's a big thing. And I just again like I do think, and people can laugh at this, I think being from here or growing up a Bruins fan, I think it's not, you don't have to be that to be the Bruins head coach. Like, it's like in Montreal, like, oh, you have to speak French. And it's like, I think that's outdated. Like, if someone's a good coach, they're a good coach. But I do think it helps with this, like understanding the region and understanding. I mean, like Ty Anderson always goes back to this, and I agree with him. After that game 6 against Florida, when they gave up a million leads, this is 2023, when they gave up a million leads, they lost, what was it, like 6-5 or 6-4? They should have absolutely won that game. That series should have been over. And the first thing Montgomery says when he comes in after the game is, wow, what a hockey game that was. And that pisses people off. And it just signals you don't fully get it here. And that doesn't make Montgomery a bad coach. I don't think he's a bad coach. I think he's, in your top 15, 12 coaches in the
He just wasn't the
league.
right guy for the job.
That's the thing. And that's why, I'm very intrigued by Joe Sacco over these next couple months, because they're 6-2 under him now. That Vancouver game, they did everything right. I thought they played a great game
Swayman
against
played one of
Vancouver.
his best games of the year, and they lost the game.
They lost. And so it's those types that that's how you're gonna have to win. Low scoring, high defense. That's what's gonna have to, it's gonna take to win. So I don't know. I think it would not shock me if Joe Sacco ends up being the guy.
Same.
wouldn't.
You bring up wanting to be here. Bruce still says he bleeds black and gold. Like he wears
I
the
know.
Bruins logo on his chest.
Bring back
And
Bruce Cassidy.
Sacco's the same way. Like he's a
I know.
Bruins fan, and now he's the coach of the Boston Bruins. Like
I know.
that does say a lot. Like that means when you play Boston Bruins hockey, that means that you're going to put your body on the line. You also need your coach to put their body on the line. Your coach needs to stand up for his players. I thought, well, it was very telling the other night. People were talking about Swayman, and he went to say, well, Korpisalo's played very well too. Bruce used to do that a lot too, where he would, and Claude Julien did that a lot, where they would build up guys in the media. They'd take shots when they needed to, but they would also build guys up.
Yeah.
Korpisalo, let's be honest, stunk against the Islanders.
Yep.
Great last game.
Soft goals.
Absolutely stunk against the Islanders. So if you're Sacco, you have been playing Swayman and you're riding him, and you've got this other guy there that just played a very good game. Yeah, throw him a bone. Be like, hey, yeah, you know what? He was really good the other night. I've got 2 great goalies. I don't just got Swayman playing good again. I got 2 great goalies. And I think Montgomery was very good in the media, and you need to be in Boston. But it's almost like he wasn't as honest, if that makes any sense.
We didn't say a heck of a lot. And he it's funny. Montgomery, I always found this funny. It's not a bad thing. I always found it funny, his cadence. He ended his sentences very immediately, and he didn't say much else. So he'd just, he'd be like, it felt like he was mid answer and he would just stop. And that was it. And I always found that interesting. And it's not a bad thing. Like, that's just how he talks. That's how it's either media training or whatever it is. But even at his St. Louis presser when he got hired, and it was, he was sort of getting emotional. It was the same thing. He didn't go on
he
and
almost
on.
wanted to cry. Like, that made me go like, you didn't want to be here. You were already out the door. You got yourself
Completely.
fired. You didn't care.
Like George Costanza stuff. Yeah, completely. So again, I think tampering absolutely happened, and I'm not reporting that. I'm not saying it did.
No, but
I think
I think you're bang on.
100%.
Oh, 100%.
I think there was definitely something, and I think there was a desire to
But
do
I also
that.
think
But
Don Sweeney knew. Don Sweeney spent the last 2 weeks before Montgomery was fired with who? Doug Armstrong. And I think, do you remember when they were in St. Louis and Cam Neely went on the road and they came back and won that game? In St. Louis, they won it. They were down. They came back to win it in the third period, and everybody was like, "Oh, the team hasn't given up on Montgomery, and they're still there." No, the team just didn't want to lose anymore because they were tired of it. But Cam Neely was there because on Behind the B, you see Cam Neely on the road in St. Louis of all places in the dressing room congratulating the guys. They lose that game. Montgomery's fired that night.
yep, and he's in St. Louis.
Yeah, he's fired that night. Everybody's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
Cam Neely was on the road." I'm like, that guy does not go on the road that often. I'm sorry.
Well, you're right, and I also look at the Montgomery stuff, and how many times in the first 20 games, how many times was it like, "Oh, he's done tonight. He's done tonight." Like if they lose, he's done, or they are losing mid game, and it's like that's it. Like the Dallas game, the Carolina game, where it's like, "Oh, he's gone." And then the Columbus game obviously was the nail in the coffin. You can't lose 5-1 to one of the worst teams in the league and give up 2 shorthanded goals.
And it was interesting because I was saying it all the time. I'm like, I would say it in my videos, I'm like, he's like, I even put the thing Behind the B. I'm like, Cam Neely was there. Like his next screw up after that St. Louis game, you're fired. And everybody kept telling me, "Oh, you're crazy. They can't fire Montgomery. He wanted Jack Adams." I was like, could you just Google the last 2 coaches in Boston Bruins history to win the Jack Adams? Because they didn't last a year. They all got fired the next year. That's the way it works. Well, no, I guess
Jack Adams like the kiss of
was
death.
2 years. Well, Jack Adams is. My dad sent a text to somebody after they won the Jack Adams, and they were like, "I guess you need to look for another job."
Well, I think it's also telling, like the consistent best head coaches don't typically get the Jack Adams. The Jack Adams award in all sports, like coach of the year in all sports, is really the surprise team that does well out of nowhere. Or I mean, Montgomery in 23 was just, they were the best team. They were wagon all time great.
Unbelievable.
But like most times it's Joe Sacco in Colorado. He was a finalist. I don't think he won it, but
No,
a finalist
he was
for
a
it
finalist.
in 2010, where it's like, oh, I didn't expect them to do this, and here they are, and here's sort of a commemorative. But those teams often don't continue on, and that's where those coaches
And
get.
you also now are here, and your expectations are that you're going to be here the whole
Yep.
time because you just won the Jack Adams.
Yep.
And
they
when
can't
the
always be
only
there.
security a coach has is winning a Stanley Cup. And even
There we
then,
go.
look at Claude Julien. He didn't get any security. He won a cup. He won a Jack Adams. You gone. He never lost
that
the
was
room. I don't care what anybody. He never lost that room.
the only thing with Claude was that it was like 5 or 6 years later after the cup that he
But
was
Sweeney
let go.
made his choice. He wanted his guy in, and his guy was Bruce.
Yeah, and I look back at all that, and there were so many times, even after they won the cup, where people were like, "Oh, he's gonna be gone." Like, you look at after, if they blow that game against the Leafs in 2013, like, is he gone then? There was lots of time before the cup too. I mean, that if they lose that Canadian series, is Claude gone? There were a lot. Claude survived a lot of stuff.
I didn't think Montgomery was getting fired this year until Fluto wrote that article in like week 2. And I was like, okay, well, I know who you talk to, so I guess he's on the hot seat, because that's the way I looked at it. As soon as Fluto talked about, is there an issue with Jim Montgomery? And I was just like, I guess there is, because you just wrote it, and this guy's fired. It is what
Fluto's
it is.
world class. If Fluto's saying it,
he is more tapped in than any. Like, for people that listen, Evan, you're awesome, but I'm sure you admit Fluto knows peeps.
Yes. Oh my god.
And so when he writes it,
I'm
like
25.
like when Fluto writes it,
a lot longer.
It's more he's being told by somebody else to put it there.
I don't. Well, I can't
Not
say
saying,
yes
sorry,
or no
not
to
saying
that.
he gets the story. I shouldn't say he's being told.
Yes.
He gets
Yeah.
that story.
Yeah.
He
He's not.
knows,
No
like,
one's telling Fluto to write
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, sorry, my
He's
apologies. I
programming
said it
Yeah.
incorrectly, but like I brought it up on my show as soon as he wrote that article about like, is Montgomery in trouble? I'm like, Montgomery's in trouble. Then he's
There it is.
fired.
He's on notice.
Sorry,
Yeah.
because he can read people. He's really good at reading people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we answered every question.
I
We
think
went an
so.
hour and 20 minutes. You know me. I don't usually go longer than like 25. So
Yeah,
this is
so are my apologies.
But no, but this you and I haven't talked in a long time.
No.
And this was sort of our way to catch up. And hopefully people enjoyed it. Well, Court, you'll have to be on more, obviously.
Let me know.
What can people look forward to from you? I know what it is, but I want you to
Yeah,
read it.
you can find me at Bruin Diehards on YouTube. It's just Bruins Diehards. And you know, every now and then I come to the Boston area. I usually always make my yearly trip in March. And I'm not afraid to meet up with anybody. I have a good time. Yeah, Evan wouldn't meet up with me in Spoke Z last time I was there, but we sent him.
I remember that. I meet up with Spoke Z more than enough. So I was
he's
like,
honestly, that was
he's
the first time I ever met up with him in person.
He's a great time.
It was unbelievable.
He's a great time. I try not to have things the next day because
I had interviews at 7 a.m. It was a disaster.
Yeah, he's quite the time. But yes, go subscribe to Bruins Diehards on YouTube. And Court, thank you. We'll have to have you on again. And that's been Bruins Beat. That's Court Lalonde. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.